My name is Tijana, and I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse and mental illness. I think it was just the perfect storm. I remember having just heightened emotions as early as 3 years old, and my father being an alcoholic and my mother being emotionally unavailable as well. She survived her own experiences. I didn't have the support that I needed, and so things really started to take a head for me when I was about 12 years old. That's when I struggled the most with my mental illness. I can remember when I was 3 years old, my parents were leaving for a vacation down in Jamaica, and my grandparents were coming, and that fear of abandonment was so intense inside of me. And all I could do was cry and scream. I didn't get the comfort and the support that I needed at the time. When I got into school and elementary school, I really felt different from everybody else, and I felt like I had a hard time connecting with my peers. I felt so strange, and I just didn't feel like I related to anybody, and I didn't feel like anybody understood me, and I didn't feel like even my family knew how to support me in that feeling. Going into middle school, I was sexually assaulted at home. It happened while I was sleeping. I only knew who was home in the house when I went to sleep. So I fell asleep in my Winnie the Pooh nightgown. I was laying on the bed with one of my dogs, and I fell asleep petting them. And when I woke up, I felt somebody touching me underneath my nightgown. I remember hearing the sound of sketchy. And as I got older, I started to understand what that sound was. And that was somebody touching themselves when they were touching me. So I only knew when I went to sleep that my brother and sister were in the house. I accused my brother of being that person. I went to school, I told the school, I told my parents, I told everybody that would listen. And of course he denied it. Because nobody did anything about it, I put him through hell. He never really said anything about it. And so I felt like nobody was taking accountability for what happened to me. That didn't get clarified until I was 18 years old. Those 7 years, I basically emotionally tortured my brother and blamed him. And he took it all. So on my 18th birthday, I found out that it was another family member that did this. And when I talked to them about it, all they could tell me was, it was me, not your brother. I was drunk. Thankfully, I was able to apologize to my brother and take accountability for the pain that I caused him. And he told me, I knew that if I told you then, you wouldn't believe me. You would not be able to handle the truth emotionally, because I was that sensitive to everything, And so my brother lovingly took the blame for all those years. And that's something that makes me very angry. I feel terrible for the things that I've done to my brother, and I'm grateful that I've been able to take accountability for the things that I've done to him because of what's happened to me. When I was 12 years old, me and my girlfriends wanted to go bowling. And my friend told me, hey, there's this guy that can give us a ride. Just flirt with him a little bit and he'll drive us there. So I did. The bowling alley wasn't open for open bowling at the time, so we ended up going to one of their friends' house. I was the older one of the group, so walking into the house, I let my girlfriends go in first, and he held up at the door for us. And then when I walked in, he pulled me into the bathroom that was right next to the door, and he pinned me up against the door and just started to touch me, kiss me, wanting, just trying to take off my clothes and stuff like that. And I'm telling him, no, I'm not ready for that. I don't want that. And he just proceeded to do whatever he wanted with me. So my little sister, who's my best friend, she heard me crying on the other side of the door. She started trying to kick down the door. She threatened to call the cops, and he let me out. I was stunned. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to think or say. And I just stayed there. We ended up staying at that house. And we were drinking with them. He was singing me love songs and trying to get me to forgive him. So nothing really happened with that. My parents came to get me because I tried to convince them to let me stay at my friend's house, and they came hunting for me door to door because they knew something wasn't right. They finally found me, and I went home with them, and I sat in my room silent for 3 days. I remember my sister coming in on that third day, asking me what happened, what's wrong. So I told her, and she went to tell my mom, and my mom took me to the hospital to do our, all the rape kit, all the investigation. Nothing happened. They came to the school with a picture lineup of potential people, and had interviewed some of my friends and stuff to try and figure it out. I had some other mutual friends that knew the guy, and they ended up socially excommunicating me. They didn't believe me. They're he would never do anything like that. And they made it seem like I was just making up stories about it. At 12 years old, I was drinking a lot. I was self-harming. I was overdosing on pain relievers. I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. I drank a lot to deal with that, along with cutting myself. I have scars on my arms from 15 years old where I did cut tissue out of my arms when I was drunk. And I carved the words, "kill me," in my arms. Those are still visible today. I ended up dropping out of school at 16 because I felt unheard, unseen, couldn't relate to anybody. When I felt that I couldn't survive and I couldn't hold a job and people were just going to take sex from me anyways, I started prostituting, thinking they're going to take it from me anyways. I may as well charge people for it, or just putting myself in really dangerous positions with strangers, meeting people off the streets, letting people pick me up from their cars, hoping that somebody would just take me and I would disappear into the world, or maybe they would kill me themselves. Like, I just didn't care what happened. So at 16 years old, part of the punishment that I put my brother through, my mom sent me away to live with my dad. She would say that I made that choice. I wanted to go live with him because I got arrested for battery, disorderly conduct, because I hit my brother and I was trying to stab him. My dad, he moved one of his girlfriends into the house, so I wasn't really around him either. And then I was living with a boyfriend, and I remember living with him and I disappeared for a week or two. And then just one day I popped back up and I had been staying at some guy's house that I had just met that whole time. Thankfully I was safe and nobody directly harmed me, I guess, but I was allowing the sexual things to take place. In college, I wasn't around my family at that time. I had a boyfriend, but I would kind of same thing. I would disappear and just not answer my phone. I remember being 23, 2 years in recovery off of alcohol and really active in a 12-step community. Had a lot of friends there, but I was dealing so deeply with this depression at the time. I remember sitting in the parking lot of the airport with my last bit of money and ready to buy a ticket to Las Vegas. And my hope was that I would just go to the strip and get lost out there. That was my plan. Kind of a suicide by proxy in a way. If I wasn't able to do it myself because it wasn't successful, because it hadn't been, then maybe something would happen to me. I don't remember what stopped me from doing that, from taking the plane to Las Vegas, but I ended up going home that night instead, and I did have a suicide attempt that night, overdosing on my medication. That was the start of a string of suicide attempts. Within 8 months, I had 5 suicide attempts. It was all overdosing on my psych medication. My doctor changed. I got a new doctor because the other one left the practice to go somewhere else, and this new doctor kept giving me more medication. I ended up being diagnosed with bipolar on top of borderline personality, depression, anxiety, and PTSD. So it's like he was giving me a medication for each one of those diagnoses. After my 4th attempt, my doctor determined that I was treatment resistant. He made the decision to, on top of the medications that he was giving me, he decided to give me shock therapy. I was in the hospital for a month. I got about 2 treatments a week. So they would put me under, put the probes on bilaterally, and administer the treatment. I lost my memory. I didn't know people that I had known for years. I lost a lot of long-term memory and short-term memory, and my cognitive functioning was impaired as well. I was walking with a cane because my equilibrium was off, and I kept falling and stumbling everywhere. After a month of being in the hospital for those treatments, they let me go home, but I had to surrender my apartment. I had to surrender my car. I surrendered my 2 jobs. So I moved into the apartment of a guy that I met in the airport. Still had bags and bags of medications. And again, I piling up in my hands and drinking them down. And at this point, I had started drinking again. So I was washing them down with alcohol. And that was my 5th attempt. And I ended up on life support for 2 days, almost 3 days. I remember waking up and I was still mad that I was alive. It took me until 2017 to start finding the will to live again. From 2014, 24 years old, until 2017, I had still struggled with the thoughts of death and not wanting to be here. And it wasn't until 2017 I found a program that helped me find the will to live again. They helped me reframe how I thought about myself, how I thought about my experiences. That started the journey for me of recovering from suicidal ideation, self-harming, and just not wanting to be alive. It gave me hope again. From 2017 into like 30 years old, even still to this day, I had to do a lot of work on myself and to become aware of the habits and the dangerous situations I was putting myself in, the relationships that I was putting myself into. I just wanted somebody to save me. So I was turning to men to be the ones that saved me. They were the ones that were just taking advantage of me. So I continued to allow that to happen and telling every man that would give me attention, I love you. Like, I would marry you today and you're perfect, even though, they'd only come to my house in the middle of the night, or, on their way to work or on their way back from work. Like, nobody was investing in me. So I had to learn how to invest in myself. I ended up pregnant by one of these men that I met online that we connected, but it was still a very superficial relationship. Got pregnant and I ended up having my daughter in 2020. And I was in New Mexico working for this company that helped me find the will to live, and was away from all of my friends and family, still with a child, a daughter that I had to try and teach all the things that nobody ever taught me, protect her in a way that nobody ever protected me, and do that alone. He didn't want to be around. And that was like one of the hardest and scariest things that I've ever had to do, because I didn't even know how to take care of myself fully at that time. I started to have a more positive outlook, but I still didn't know how to protect myself. I was still prostituting myself. I was still putting myself in dangerous situations with these men. And like, while she was at daycare in the safe place, I was out doing other things, not being safe for myself. So I made a decision, for the safety of both myself and my daughter, to move back to Wisconsin, to be around supportive people. All of the girlfriends that I grew up with and my siblings were still here. They were all having kids, and I wanted my daughter to be around family and cousins, to have those relationships. My brother came down and with my mom to help me drive back to Wisconsin with all of our stuff. My mom lived in Kansas at the time, and so that was a halfway point. In the moving process, me and my brother were both really stressed out, and we got into a couple of small fights on the way there and packing up and stuff. But when we got to that halfway point at my mom's, we had a huge fight, and it just started with bickering, and it turned into all of the years of pain that we had built up and the animosity that we had built up towards each other. Even though I had apologized, kind of made amends, there was still a lot of pain there. And that all came out in this fight with my brother. And this was a turning point for me, because in the middle of that fight, I just had a moment. My mom separated us, like, go into your own corners and chill out for a little bit. And in that moment of calming down, I don't know what happened in my head, but everything made sense. All of the pain I put my brother through, like, as we were fighting, I could see everything in him. The way that he felt about himself, the way that he felt about life, the way that he felt about me. He had a lot of anger and pain himself that me and everybody else just kind of brushed off. And nobody took accountability for what had truly happened to him. We came back together and I was a lot more calm. And I was like, okay, like, I understand why you're feeling this way. And at first he was mad at me because he's like, oh, you're just being a narcissist and you're calm now to make me look like the crazy one. But I sat there and explained to him, I see you now. I see the pain that I caused you, and I see how I stole your childhood because mine was stolen from me. And I took all of that out on you because I didn't know what else to do. And I was so angry at you because that was all that I knew at that time. And I caused you so much damage by doing all of these things to you. In that moment, I learned what taking accountability really meant. That experience and being able to drive back home with him for another 12 hours, being in a car with him, we still had some moments, but we also had some really good talks about our life and came to understanding about our experiences. And we both had a moment to be felt and seen and heard from somebody that was in that same household, which was something that none of us had had. None of us really talked about the truth about everything that was happening in our home. And it was healing for both of us. And I was able to move back here and reconnect with him But more so, that was a pivotal moment in my transformation because I started being able to take accountability for the other things in my life. November 2021, had a beautiful apartment duplex waiting for me and my daughter with a yard for her to play in. And I just had a good job and things that were able to pay the bills for me. And I was backed by a supportive family. I was really scared to move back here because of all of the trauma, but somebody had reminded me along the way, because I had started to make changes in the way that I thought about myself. She said, "You're not the same person that you were when you lived there." These were messages that I took with me on my journey from New Mexico back into Wisconsin. I had a therapist that told me, don't be the last to know how amazing you are. Because I was starting to make that transition, but I still didn't embody that new vision of myself. I didn't embody the confidence and the security that I had created for myself. I still felt like I was in survival mode, even though I was starting to make good decisions for myself. So when I got back here, having these thoughts in mind, I started seeking community. I founded a local nonprofit organization here in the town I live in called We Empower. They had a program, a 12-week class that provided a mentor for you. And they connected me with a mentor that became like a maternal figure for me, somebody just to be supportive and validating. I went through this program and I was able to connect with other women, hear other people's stories, and validate my experiences and know that I wasn't alone in those experiences. I just had an opportunity to start exploring who I truly was. I was trying to seek men, kind of going back into those old habits, and I ended up with an unplanned pregnancy with somebody that was just a very sexual relationship, and that's all that they wanted, right? So starting out this 12-week series with We Empower, I was pregnant, about to have 2 kids on my own as a single mom with no support from their fathers. So having this program to provide me a mentor that could help me and support me and empower me, I felt more confident going into motherhood again. Now I'm telling my story, and I've started my own brand kind of as a motivational speaker, and I'm sharing my story on podcasts and working towards becoming a coach to help other people go through these experiences and help them understand their journey and their truth. And that's called transforming truth, right? Because we have one truth that we believe, but then there's the truth that we know deeply, right? And I want to help people find that truth that's deep inside of them that they can own and just know confidently who they are and start to create a life that they're proud of. My kids are now 4 and 1. I just recently lost a job, which is terrifying, but I have so much more confidence now in my skills and my abilities that I started my own LLC, and now I'm doing contract work and marketing and administrative assistant work with the nonprofit program that that helped me in my journey. And I am volunteering, I'm mentoring other women, and I'm speaking. I'm finding more peace in myself by creating balance and inner harmony for myself. And, I still struggle with anxiety. I still struggle with depression, but I look at them differently now. They don't have the same power over me as they used to. It doesn't just get better. It's a roller coaster going through and processing all these things. But there's hope, because it gets less intense the more you work on it. The effort and time and having the willingness to explore this and the willingness to seek out safe places and safe people that could help you process your memories and your thoughts. All of that stuff that you do to process these things help, because there's not a light at the end of the tunnel. There's a light inside of you, and that light will grow. And that light will help you navigate that tunnel so that you won't stumble and trip and fall backwards as much. So there's hope. It gets less intense, and you have a choice. Like life is read your own adventure story, and you get choices. At every turn of the page, you have a choice, 2 choices, 3 choices. And the choice that you make is going to lead you down a path. And you just have to think about which path you really want to be on, and you have to be aware of the choices that you make. And the choices that you make can either grow that light within you, or it's going to help diminish that light. So seek the path of light, and the rest will follow.